Basement genius versus golden child. We grew up under a roof where praise had a uniform. My brother looked like a brochure. Blazer at 12, handshake at 13, alumni mentors by 14. I lived in the laundry room with a tower PC that sounded like a leaf blower and a soldering iron I wasn't allowed to use inside. He gave speeches at family dinners about vision. I rebuilt routers stolen from the e-waste pile and made our dial-up move. Mom said, "He's a leader." Dad said, "He's got presence." I heard, "You're the IT guy." When something broke, they yelled my name from the stairs like I was a help desk. When something worked, they congratulated him for nudging me. It's funny until it isn't. College was cheap ramen and problem sets. I skipped the recruiting fair. Instead, I spun a hacked-together prototype in a sublet that smelled like curry and ozone. We launched with a landing page and a webhook no one should have trusted. 100 signups, then 1,000. I patched at 3 a.m., took calls at 5 a.m., and wrote code that fit together the way my family never did. He circled back. "Optics," he said, tapping the investor deck like a metronome. "You need polish." I needed uptime. Still, I let him try on titles like hats. Advisor, head of strategy. He liked rooms where calendars were printed and pins had logos. I liked bash prompts and green tests. The stack grew, so I made choices my family would call paranoid. Least privilege wasn't a buzzword for me. It was theology. Role-based access control per service, attribute-based checks for context, and per service IAM roles with narrowly scoped permissions. No shared credentials, device posture enforced. Mutual TLS between microservices. Short-lived tokens minted via OIDC. Everything wrapped in envelope encryption with KMS, and keys rotated on a schedule that never slipped. 90 days automatic, revocation on anomaly. Secrets lived in a vault, not Slack, and not in any notebook with a coffee ring. I put escrow keys on a Shamir split. Fragments with me, our independent auditor, and a sealed copy in a safe. Immutable logs went to worm storage with cross-account replication. I seeded canary tokens across privileged paths. If anyone tried to pull a rabbit out of my hat, the hat would scream. We got our seed round. He stood behind me in the photo like he'd been coding next to me since day zero. Mom finally posted, "So proud of my boys," but the caption congratulated his alma mater. I laughed, then worked through the night wiring billing to a second provider so one outage wouldn't gut us. Early customers needed reliability more than flair. We sharded the data layer, split hot paths from cold analytics, and gave ourselves multi-cloud redundancy that most people only pitched. I ran a private mirror repo outside the main cloud accounts, belt and suspenders, because a vendor lock-in tantrum can erase more equity than a bad quarter. He started hiring brand guys, the kind of folks who say narrative without nausea. They changed our fonts and renamed features none of them understood. Engineers raised eyebrows. Sales asked for one more demo environment. I kept smiling and built a sandbox that looked dangerously real. Canary docs lived there. Fake roadmaps with watermarking that would mark whichever leaker needed a hobby. Personal truth? I wanted Mom to look at the product and say, "I'm proud of you." Instead, she said, "Don't be weird in front of the board." Dad asked for the master password, like we were logging into Netflix. My brother repeated it at a staff meeting. We should centralize the admin keys, make it simple. Simplicity kills when it's a single point of failure. I nodded politely and shipped more automation. So I wrote a deadman-switch clause into our business continuity policy, buried in a section only 3 people would ever read. If the founding CTO's YubiKey didn't validate during a verified continuity event, executive rights froze. Production required dual auth with the auditor, and every non-customer-facing dashboard dimmed. Not a shutdown, a swerve into safety. We won a few more contracts, the product sang. He took calls with potential board members and practiced saying fiduciary like it had taste. I watched the calendar, I watched the logs, and I watched him watch my chair. The shadow grew with revenue. Then one Thursday, while I was resolving a gnarly race condition, he CC'd me on an invite. Special session, leadership continuity vote. No agenda attached, no documents linked. Just 3 signatures in the footers of people who never emailed me directly. When I pinged legal, I got scheduling links and silence. At brunch that weekend, my parents ran a rehearsal dinner without me. "Resets are hard," my mother said, stirring coffee in circles. "Mature leadership requires optics," my father added, eyes on his phone. My brother cut his eggs with measured bites. You'll focus on product, he said. I'll steady the market. I kept chewing. The deadman-switch clause in my head clicked once, softly, like a camera shutter. I walked home, opened my laptop, and documented everything. Policy diffs, access maps, key rotations, the little paper trail no one respects until a judge points at it. The vote was coming. The rails were already built. Building the moat, they laughed at. If the first act was survival, this one was engineering revenge disguised as reliability. I started with the map. Services split into microservices that could die alone without taking friends with them. Every hop spoke MTLS. Certificates short-lived, auto-rotated, device posture checked before anything whispered to anything else. If a laptop lost its patch level, it turned into a pumpkin. People called it overkill. I called it Tuesday. Access wasn't a hallway. It was a turnstile every 10 feet. RBAC for roles, ABAC for context, and per service IAM roles. So nothing ever borrowed clothes it didn't need. No shared creds ever. Short-lived tokens via OIDC, minted with scope sharp enough to shave with. Envelope encryption on everything at rest. KMS keys rolling every 90 days. Revocation wired to anomaly detection, so a weird spike meant the key just stopped being a key. Secrets lived in a vault with access workflows, approvals, and a paper trail that made auditors sigh with relief. Audit was my love language. Logs rode once, read forever, parked in worm storage and cross-account replicated so no single admin or suit could tidy up inconvenient truth. I salted the place with canary tokens and privileged paths. Touch a fake invoice queue, trip an alarm, open a phantom S3 bucket. I see your IP before your coffee cools. Vendor redundancy wasn't a pitch deck slide. It was battle rhythm. Multi-cloud regions mirrored. Traffic managers aware of health, not hope. Data sharded by blast radius. Hot paths separated from analytics so dashboards could choke without denting customer-facing latency. I kept a private mirror repo outside the main clouds. Belt, suspenders, and a hand on the railing, because your favorite platform will love you right up until billing misreads a number. Feels paranoid, my brother said, paging through an architecture diagram like it was modern art. Real companies centralize. Real companies also crater because someone loved simplicity more than safety. He wanted a master password the way a toddler wants a screwdriver. I smiled, built what he could see, and behind it, something he couldn't break. He hired brand guys who said storytelling and vibes, and proposed a logo refresh that looked like toothpaste. Engineers tried to explain why a feature rename breaks SDK clients if you don't ship shims. I translated until they stopped pretending. Then I built a sandbox that gleamed, complete with APIs that returned plausible nonsense. Canary docs lived there. Fake roadmaps with invisible watermarks tuned per recipient. Leak it, and the pixels testify. Meanwhile, I tightened business continuity the way climbers check knots. Dual cloud backups tested, not assumed. RPO and RTO wired into alarms that screamed if we drifted. The deadman-switch clause was already in policy. Now I attached the machinery. Founding CTO YubiKey required to lift executive rights during any continuity event. If my key didn't light up under a notary timestamp, the plane flew, but the cockpit locked. Product green, dashboards gray, customers safe, suits annoyed. I hardened our identity surface. Device enrollment with attestation, jailbreak checks, and automatic quarantine if posture dipped below policy. Every admin action wrapped in just-in-time elevation, least privilege by default, time-bounded, with reason codes you couldn't write because into. Approvals chain, me and the auditor. Not romantic, but very married to the truth. Monitoring wasn't just CPU and P95. It was credential churn, token issuance patterns, odd-hour access from impossible travel pairs, DNS anomalies that smell like a tunnel, and outbound egress profiles that don't belong to our Tuesday. If something moved wrong, we cut it at the knee and asked questions with packets in hand. I added a quiet flourish, blockchain notarized anchors for change windows and policy snapshots. Not to be cool, because when liars perform sincerity, you need something more boring than charisma. Each release signature hashed, timestamped, and anchored to a public ledger. If anyone ever argued a timeline, the ledger didn't care about family politics. My parents visited the office once and complimented the ficus. "Do you really need all these servers?" Mom asked, pointing at a rack photo like it was clutter. "It's the cloud," Dad said, proud to know the word. "So it's nowhere." I said, "It's everywhere, precisely." They nodded like I'd said grace. We grew. Sales wanted just one super admin for demos. I gave them a choreographed role with a leash measured in seconds and a fake crown. Legal wanted vendor consolidation. I split control planes from data planes and put kill switches on both. Finance asked why we paid two providers for the same thing. "Because we like sleeping," I said. Then a red flag waved. My brother forwarded a request from his ops council for a document called Root Credentials and Escalation Paths. That's not a question you ask if you understand anything. I wrote a doc. It was perfect theater. Decoy admin accounts, ring-fenced to a shadow environment with read-only illusions and audit trails that pointed back to whoever got curious. The real root stayed custodial. Shamir split between me and the independent auditor, sealed, inventoried, and logged on paper and chain. Engineers pulled me aside. "Are we safe? Safer than yesterday? Are we getting sidelined?" "Probably." "Do you trust him?" "I trust physics." They laughed. I didn't. Because the moat wasn't about keeping everyone out. It was about making sure when someone who thinks he inherited a castle shows up, he finds a reflection pool and drowns in his own press release. I checked my keys, checked the counters, and let the clocks keep time. The moat held. The drawbridge worked. The torches stayed lit. And from across the courtyard, I could feel him measuring angles to my chair. The setup for theft. The first real tilt started with a chair that shouldn't have moved. Our independent board member, the one who actually read things, stepped down for health reasons. 48 hours later, my uncle's golfing buddy filled the seat like a ghost wearing a tie. No search, no votes I saw. Just a LinkedIn change and a press email drafted before I could blink. I pinged counsel. "I got busy today. Can we circle back?" Translation. The stagehands were already rolling the new set on. I filed it because that's what I do. I updated bylaws. The ones people sign without reading when times are calm and use like a cudgel when times turn. I tightened the clauses about executive authority during continuity events, made the definitions explicit, cited the auditor's role in dual authorization, and stapled the deadman-switch language to the front of the appendix. If anyone tried to interpret around it later, they'd find concrete where they expected mud. Finance started humming a tune called Consolidate Vendors. My brother forwarded the memo with lots of bolding around efficiency, cost savings, and centralization under the COO. Not subtle. Centralized control planes under the person trying to learn Git from a meme. I replied with a spreadsheet showing blast radius math and regulatory parity. He replied, "Let's discuss optics." There it was again. Optics. Like Uptime cares about angles. Meanwhile, he formed something called the Ops Council. They met at 7 in the morning, drank lattes, and tried to draw ARG charts with arrows pointing at my ARG like it was a quarry. They wanted clean lines of escalation, so I gave them lines. I created decoy admin accounts bound to a shadow environment, a high-fidelity replica with read-only illusions and harmless knobs. It looked real. It behaved real. But it lived in a sandbox so soft, it couldn't bruise a grape. Every action there stamped a trail directly back to the user, with canary tokens salted into paths their curiosity couldn't resist. The real root remained what it always was, custodial split. Shamir shared fragments, mine, the independent auditors, and a sealed escrow recorded in a physical logbook with signatures, plus a notarized hash anchored to a public ledger. If a hurricane took our building, the keys still existed as math and process, not as that password Dan keeps in his notes app. HR drama cropped up like mold. The brand guys posted in Slack about culture stewardship and executive presence training. Engineers rolled eyes so hard we considered adding it to the health dashboard. My brother started scheduling skip levels with my team. I wasn't invited. One of my staff sent me a photo from outside a conference room. My parents sitting at the end of a table, beaming. A whiteboard that said, "Leadership Reset." There was a bag of croissant, and the kind of joy you save for birthdays. I wasn't on the calendar. I adjusted. When someone tries to pull your rug, you nail the corners down and put a couch on top. I scrubbed our continuity runbooks, moved critical doc copies to Worm with retention locks, and signed the new snapshot set with my key, the auditors, and a timestamp notarized to the same ledger we used for release anchors. I created a changelog packet with chain of custody pages. Who touched what, when, from where, with hashes for every artifact. I wrote it like I was explaining it to a judge who hates computers. Then the invite hit. Special session, leadership continuity vote. No agenda, no board packet. 3 names in the footer, my parents and the new seat warmer. Meeting link set to a personal Zoom account, which told me everything about the respect they had for process. I asked for chain of title on the agenda, on the minutes, on the proxy forms. Counsel replied with a calendar link and a smiley. Mom texted, "Don't be dramatic." Dad added, "We all want what's best." I printed the policies and stuck them in a folder that felt like armor. I pushed a tiny patch, quietly switching our admin dashboard's live backends to a read-only replica with a 15-minute delay. Customer systems stayed hot. Executive glass went frosted. If the vote went sideways, they'd be looking through a museum window at yesterday. The night before, I distributed a sanitized escalation paths doc to the Ops Council. Heavy on diagrams, light on keys. Inside it, a few well-placed canary links pointed to decoy credential stores. If anyone tried to scrape, I'd see source IPs, device fingerprints, and time pairs that never lie. I went for a walk. Past the office my brother put his name on. Past the coffee shop where I did my first code review with a college friend who now ran data. Past a kid spinning a scooter wheel, counting the clicks. I counted mine. Key fragments accounted for. Auditor on standby. Ledger anchors verified. Immutable logs cross-account replicated. Retention locked. Deadman-switch wiring green. At brunch, Mom practiced a speech about how transition is healthy. Dad said, "Markets love clarity." My brother smiled like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror. I asked, "What authority are you using?" He said, "The boards." I said, "Show me chain of title." He blinked, and that's when I knew the paperwork would be performance art. Back at my desk, I wrote one more clause into a footnote everyone would skip. Emergency continuity requires founding CTO signature. A sentence that sounds like nothing until the day it sounds like a lock. Then I closed the laptop, set my YubiKey on the desk, and waited for the calendar to chime. The ambush board meeting. The room felt like a dentist's office pretending to be important. Glossy table, bottled water with labels facing out, and a projector humming at a pitch that made my molars ache. Suits already sat in their designated power spots. My brother had the head of the table and a grin calibrated to steady leadership. My parents were side by side, hands folded, eyes soft in that pitying way that says the decision's been made and they're hoping you don't cry. "Glad you could make it," my brother said, voice dipped in chamomile. "We have a full agenda." "We don't," I said, setting my folder on the table. "You didn't publish one." He nodded like I'd agreed with him. Counsel cleared his throat and clicked a slide. The title, Leadership, Continuity, and Market Stability. Subtext, "We rehearsed this while you were shipping code." The bullet points were the kind that never touch ground. Stakeholder confidence, governance maturity, fiduciary foresight. He'd learned to stack buzzwords like sandbags against facts. "Before we proceed," I said, "chain of custody on the materials, please. Board packet, proxies, timestamp distribution logs, and the recorded authority for this special session." Mom reached for my hand across the table and stopped halfway. Deciding optics said no. "Honey, let's not make this adversarial." "If we're voting, it's a record," I said. "I'm not the one turning it into a scrapbook." Counsel smiled a lawyer's smile and lifted a folder. "All in order. We can address specific concerns after the vote." "That's not how process works," I said. But I already knew process had lost its seat. My brother stood, buttoned his jacket with that slow practice move, and slipped into the speech he'd probably delivered to a mirror at midnight. "We're at an inflection point. The market is rewarding clarity. Our customers want assurance that leadership is seasoned, visible, and aligned with go-to-market excellence. I love my brother and respect his genius." I held up a hand. "Cut the eulogy. What are you actually moving?" He breathed, measured. "Motion to appoint me interim CEO with full executive authority and transition my brother to chief product architect reporting to me, effective immediately upon majority board approval." Dad gave me the dad shrug he saves for truancy and parking tickets. Mom mouthed, "It's temporary," like it was a bedtime story. The new board member, my uncle's tea buddy, looked down at his paper and pretended to read it for the first time. Proxies? I asked. Counsel slid copies across the table. Clean signatures, nice loops, names of 2 absentee directors who never missed a vote until today. The timestamps glowed like they'd been picked out by someone who thinks time is a prop. I flipped pages. The PDFs had that brittle sheen you get when someone exports from preview and hopes no one notices. Who distributed these? I asked. And when? Standard process? Counsel said. Which is? I pressed. We'll discuss after the vote, my brother added, like a principal escorting me from homeroom. I looked at the projector. The agenda slide had footer metadata leaking out in tiny gray text. Version 7.2. Author, mom's first name initialed, last name spelled the way only family spells it. Clumsy. Familiar. Put it on the record, I said, letting my voice go flat. We have a defective agenda, proxies without established chain of custody, and a meeting convened on a personal teleconferencing account last time. Today, we're at least in a conference room. Progress. The new director coughed. We should proceed, he said, because that's what he was there to say. Let's vote, my brother said, gentle as a hammer wrapped in velvet. They raised hands like they were blessing a ship. 3 up, mine down. Motion carried across a pool of silence. Counsel nodded to security before the nod to me. 2 guys by the door straightened in unison, the kind of choreography you only get with practice. One held a small manila envelope like we were in a movie. My badge was inside before I could decide how to laugh. Policy requires immediate credential return, Counsel said. Voice all procedure, now that it suited him. We'll coordinate a transition plan for systems access. About that, I said, and slid my folder closed. Executive rights change under a continuity event. You didn't read it, but you signed it. My brother leaned forward. Don't do this, he said, hush-voiced, for the cameras that weren't there. Do what? I asked. Protect uptime? Customers? Evidence? Mom stood, hands up like she could catch falling plates. Sweetheart. I picked up my keys, not the badge. The keys that matter. Put on the record, I said, looking at Counsel, that I requested chain of custody and chain of title before any motion. Denied. That I objected to defective notice. Ignored. That you moved anyway. Noted, Counsel said, pen scratching nothing. Security stepped closer. I gave them the courtesy of a nod. We're good, I said. I'm walking. In the hallway, the air dropped 5 degrees. The receptionist watched me like she was afraid. Eye contact counted as complicity. My phone buzzed with calendar changes I didn't accept. The elevator took forever, the way elevators do when you need them to be kind. I stared at my reflection in the brushed steel, shirt a little wrinkled, eyes clear. The doors opened. In the lobby, a framed photo of the founding team smiled at whoever needed a story. My brother stood behind me in it, hands on my shoulders. I'd left that up because I thought it was funny. Walking past it, it became a receipt. Outside, the sun did not care. I crossed to the parking lot, felt heat through the soles of my shoes, and unlocked my car. Laptop bag on the passenger seat. YubiKey on my key ring, a tiny piece of plastic with more spine than the room I'd just left. I closed the door. The sound felt like a seal around a new world. I didn't start the car. I opened the laptop. The deadman-switch clock glowed in the corner, patient and green. The compliance lockout was wired, the rails humming, the read-only mirror spinning. I tethered to my phone, pulled down a terminal, the forensic staff that belonged to me. First move, pull the meeting stuff. I hit the board portal mirror, not live. Grab the proxy PDFs, hash them, SHA 2056, and log the digest to my changelog that's already timestamped on a public chain. Receipts, drama. I open the PDFs. Metadata sings. EXIF, XMP say creator preview.app. Locale, NRUS, the Berlin signer. Their machine didn't touch this. Timestamps are off, signed 4 minutes before an email that claims it was already filed. The XREF shows a late tweak to signature appearance, not the signed bytes. That's a pasted picture, not a real digital signature. I run Acrobat's validator. One shows valid look, broken trust. OCSP URL 404s. The document hash doesn't match the signature dictionary. Translation? Someone dragged a PNG on a PDF and prayed. Emails next. I pull raw headers from journaling. SPF, soft fail, wrong mail relay. DK, body hash didn't verify. Alignment fails. Domain tags don't match the from. No screenshots. Full headers, tool output, message IDs. Hash, timestamp, anchor. Chain of custody, read-only source, worm archive, retention lock-on. Portal logs. A signer logs in at 2:03 a.m. from a hotel IP near us, minutes before a signature in another time zone. Device fingerprint matches my brother's assistant. Impossible travel flags light up. Either she teleports or someone is reusing tokens on a couch. I zoom out to API logs. Admin renders, exports. Same 3 IPs, boutique ISP. Same browser. Same weird custom font fingerprint. Pattern too clean to be real life. I build a boring, deadly dossier.